G'day gents, I'm back. Strap in for a long rambling video. If you only want to see the miniatures, stay for the miniatures part and maybe go to the end to see the slides, to see the stills, and listen to the initial stuff about the what you see in front of you. In part, I thought I'd try and make a longer video. I haven't made a longer one for a while, and Fraser von Ketteringham is recovering from a hernia and an op, and he complained the other day, commented the other day on his most recent video, the dearth or lack of content from us people in this hobby space, whether we're painter gamers or just gamers or whatever. That's been a bit slim pickings, and he said he'd like to have something just to listen to, talk hobby blather, and sit back and enjoy. So whether he'll do that with this, I don't know, but I've made some notes. It could be scary. No, it won't be scary. Okay, guys, start up. First, what can you see in front of you? Well, these magnificent miniatures, they're from my mate Mark in New Zealand. They form part of, I think it's the last part of his current warband build for Saga Age of Chivalry. But these chappies here would be perfectly fine for Baron's War and for armies throughout the 13th and 14th century, I would say. Mounted crossbowmen. Yes, crossbowmen often rode mounted into battle, and I guess took their place on the ground or whatever, I don't know. I might be a bit tricky loading a crossbow from a horse. I'm not sure how you'd go about that, but let me know if you've done it. Yes, so now these miniatures you can see in front of you, and there are a couple of ring-ins up the back there. I'll show you briefly as well. These miniatures are all from Medbury. Now, Medbury have a thing with their run-of-the-mill, like, mounted troops, not like special character figures and stuff. So these are where they have plastic horses. So these metal figures are actually from the foundry that Medbury has. Foundry is a glorified word for a place where they cast stuff in is it Queensland or New South Wales, somewhere like that. Anyway, they spin a few molds, and I think there was even talk about them setting up their own print farm, because it's difficult to find printed miniatures of their stuff here in Australia, and this is where they come from, so it's kind of tricky. I don't own a printer, and to ramble a bit, I don't really want to get a printer. They're smelly, they're stinky, they'll take up more room in my garage, and unless they become as simple as a pop-up toaster, I don't want any part of it, really. It sounds too complex and too much faff and too much dealing with smelly alcohol and smelly resin and toxic thingamies. But yeah, if one day it becomes as easy as putting a couple of slices of bread in a toaster, pushing the button down and up it pops, that sounds good. If we ever get there, maybe I'll buy one. And living in Australia, I might need one, because it's getting harder and harder to get miniatures at reasonable prices here in Australia. But that's another subject for later. Okay, so you're going to see some pictures at the end of these metal figures on their plastic horses, and from different angles, but they are fantastic miniatures, as all the Medbury stuff is that I've painted from their Dark Age and their medieval stuff. I haven't painted any of their Middle Earth stuff, not yet. But I love their stuff. It's great. It just hits that sweet spot. They're beautifully sculpted, and they cast up really well in metal. They know how to sculpt for war gamers. There's some crazy outlandish 3D sculpted stuff out there that you might find on My Manufacturer stuff that's not really sculpted with the end product in mind, that someone has to get this and paint this and put it on a table for games. It's more like what crazy inside out spider kind of crazy thing can I make that's got lots of bits going in a million directions which isn't very practical usually for painting or for the tabletop. But these guys, Andrew Medbury, he knows his stuff. Anyway, so they're lovely, lovely miniatures. They really are. And they took me quite a while to paint. It's what I've been doing for a good couple of weeks or more in January, working on these guys. So the Magnificent 8 here. And over the back, oh boy, I've painted so many of these. That for some reason, unbeknownst to me, Mark said he wanted even more of these. I have painted so many of these footsore miniatures, light cavalry mounted doohickey dudes over the years, both for his Irish and for the Strathclyde guys, and for the life of me, I cannot remember from our messages to and fro whether, and now I've made him go all blurry and out of focus. Come here. There we go. I can't remember whether these are Strathclyde or Irish, but anyway, I kind of like, I got inspired by kind of a Rangers of the North colour scheme, the Grey Company. So they're not grey, but they've got greenish greys and that kind of subdued colours. I think I started with, like, there's bronze green from Vallejo on the cloak and on one of the tunics, and then there's greys, and then there's green greys and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, very simple shield designs. They're both, perhaps they're brothers, I don't know. They've both got the same shield design. Anyway, I hope that is the end of those types of miniatures for Mark's collection. I hope we've finally got there. It can get a bit boring, as you know, if you're painting the same pose over and over and over and over. Most of us prefer not to do it in this day and age. It used to be de rigueur. It used to be the thing you did back in the 70s and whatever, the old armies, 70s, 80s, the old armies that used to just be all monopose, you know. And you literally were painting the same figure over and over, especially in the Napoleonics. But it's nice these days. We're a bit spoiled. Get a bit of variety. So I hope you like these. They turned out very snazzy because Medbury make good miniatures and they paint up real good. Now, interesting thing about the horses. Now, as some of you probably know, Wargames Atlantic actually produce a couple of boxes under their general accoutrement ranges of horses. Now, I don't know how many of you were aware, but when you actually buy the miniatures direct from Medbury, you get these. Now, I have a suspicion that these sprues are probably different than the ones in the box sets under general accoutrement. Now, what makes me think that is up the top here, it says 2024 Medbury Miniatures stamped on it, and down the bottom, made by Wargames Atlantic. Standing, I think it says over here, Standing Horse, yeah, Standing Horse 02, 01, 02, okay. Yes, so these are the sprues that I used, and there may have been another sprue. I think you can see that snapped off there, I think. So there's probably, yeah, another sprue, maybe with a couple of different poses. Yeah, there must be about 4 poses in the frame, I think, when you look at them. And they go together really well, fused together very nicely with, you know, like the extra thin cement type of stuff. Yeah, they're very nicely made. They don't have huge glaring gaps. I mean, you can see where they go together kind of in a general sense, but it's not unsightly or anything. So for those who are curious about whether there were any more plastic horses out there by Wargames Atlantic, it could well be that these may be different, mainly because they actually specify that they're for Medbury Miniatures. So they may have said, we don't want, otherwise, you know, maybe they could have just got the ones that were already under the general accoutrement thing and put them in, but no, these are actually stamped with their name on it. So an interesting fact, especially for those of you who are interested in plastics and things like that. So I'll put that back. Now, these weren't left over from this job, this painting I've been doing for Mark. That's a sprue I have yet to put together for my own stuff. So I'll put that back in the box. Because if you've been following me over a while, I haven't had a video for a while, but you may have seen that I put up a number of posts on various topics. But I have shown a pile of boxes that I bought with birthday and Christmas money of the War Games Atlantic Barons War Rangers. So suffice to say, I have all of them now, although I believe they're bringing out command sets as well now, and other things in the future, I guess. Okay, so I was going to talk about, just looking at my notebook here, some of you in the UK, I've watched a couple of videos recently, and I watch lots of videos, or have videos on while I'm painting as well, but just a couple that have made me think and chunter to myself quietly about how, yes, it might be like that in the US or the UK, but it's not like that here. And one of those things is to do with the pricing of miniatures. A lot of people are saying, oh, Vectrix, so fantastic, such great value for money. And yes, they're highly detailed sculpts, and they're very well done, and the sculptors did and do a fantastic job, and the mouldings are super and all that. And then they go on to say how cheap they are. But did you know they ain't that cheap in Australia, or New Zealand for that matter? I know this because I looked into it when I was wanting to start assembling some stuff for my 13th century personal project. I actually did the calculations per figure. I looked at numerous websites. I had a look at ordering stuff direct, but the postage is usually brutal. Postage is brutal to Australia. It didn't used to be that way from the UK. It's just about always been that way from the US. Forget getting anything from the US, and it's even worse now. But earlier in the 2000s, nearly everything I had for wargaming came from the UK. I wouldn't think twice about ordering something from North Star, War Bases, I don't know, Gripping Beast. I'd just do it because it was affordable. It wasn't an issue. The deliveries were timely and they were affordable, even with the postage. But since the plague era, we seem to have entered in upon a time where that's no longer the case for those of us living down under in Australia and New Zealand. I can only speak to, because I've got mates in New Zealand, and obviously I live in Tasmania, the island below Australia, so I know about those things. And there's been a long history, and especially I know people who are into Games Workshop products. I'm not personally, but have long complained about the Australia tax, how prices are hiked up for the Australian market, even though technically they probably don't need to be. But it's just got worse and worse. And even with plastic figures, I'm find myself, I didn't used to be the sort of guy who wanted to collect plastic figures. I only wanted to do metal. But that has, because the economics of the hobby have changed so much in recent times, in the last decade, I find that harder and harder to hold on to as an ideal. I think I will still, where I can, supplement stuff with metal figures, particularly as we do have a couple of sources in Australia. We do have Eureka Miniatures, and we do have Medbury for your medievals. And I think there's Elite Miniatures as well that stock some stuff that they've managed to get in at a good price and is reasonable as well. But there isn't a lot around like locally grown, and most stuff has to come from overseas. And yeah, it's really biting it because I don't have a lot of money to spend. My hobby money basically for figure purchases and whatnot has to come from monies that family gives me at birthdays or Christmas or Father's Day or whatever like that. Apart from that, like hobby supply stuff, paints, of which I have a lot. Paints and brushes, I just take that and get that as I need it. Well, I have more than I need, but, you know, get them as I think that would be useful. And we do fortunately have some really good places to get things like that. So the hobby supplies isn't an issue because I can get that really reasonably priced hobby stuff from Gap Games, Tabletop Empires, the Combat Company. Those are the big three I can think of off the top of my head that do really reasonably priced paints and stuff like that, and hobby materials. The days of having local hobby stops, you know, places I could go, that seems to have gone by the wayside as well. So, Victrix versus Wargames Atlantic. Well, I've gone for Wargames Atlantic because when I did the figure, how many figures you get in a box and how much it's going to cost for me to buy it, Wargames Atlantic came out way in front. Significantly in front for me to say, right, well, that's it. I'm sticking with that. I know, yeah, as I said before, other people in the Northern Hemisphere have said the opposite, that Victrix for them is cheaper, but it's certainly not for me. Definitely not. So, yeah, even just to buy a sprue of Victrix is per figure, you know, what you pay per figure, it's a bit eye-watering by comparison with Wargames Atlantic. And I think that's to do with Wargames Atlantic's warehousing system and the way that they're set up for that. They've just got that sorted a bit better. Yeah, something like that. But it means that I can get most of my stuff. Wargames Atlantic purchases have come through Gap Games, I think, and they seem to be hit a really good price point, and often they'll have really good specials at times as well. So on top of that, so yeah. Now, the other thing with Victrix, I really respect their work and the detail of it, and it takes paint well and everything, and it's sort of leading the way with a lot of things. Stylistically, that's not my first choice either. I find the torsos, anatomically, the torsos are too broad for average human beings. That goes beyond heroic proportions of the. It just, to me, to my eye anyway, it looks a bit. I don't feel comfortable with. It feels awkward. And I have painted quite a lot of them. I've never bought any for myself and assembled any for myself, but I have done a lot of them for other people, some of which you've seen on this channel: Carthaginians, Numidians, Romans, and there's been other Roman stuff I've done which I don't put on the channel because I'm not overly excited by Romans or ancients anymore. It's not something that I like to do a lot of. It's just not my jam. And as this, me painting is, I'm not a business. I paint for guys that I know, and I don't do it in a business-like way. It's just, yeah, I get paid for doing some stuff, but I paint, you know, what I'd like to paint, the kind of stuff I like to do. And I tinker around with my own stuff as well, and it's yeah, okay. So anyway, yeah, the aesthetic, I find particularly with the non-regimented Victrix poses, I find their stances a bit too wide, their bodies flailing around just a bit too much, their legs just stretched a bit too much. So much so that I've noticed people's recent videos where they've actually, in order just to fit them onto a basic 25mm round base, which is quite the standard in our hobby, they've had to clip bits off the puddle base in order just to get them on. So, yeah. Anyway, but I like what Wargames Atlantic is doing. Now, interestingly, which kind of leads indirectly onto another subject. I told you I'm going to go on for a while. And that's about, there was a recent video by Big Lee of Miniature Adventures, where he talked about free stuff, and if getting as YouTubers getting free stuff and doing reviews is not always as unbiased, perhaps, as we might think in our reviews or whatever. Or anyway, he just raised a number of interesting subjects. He leaves it open for discussion, which is what I liked about a number of his thought essays, as they are, I suppose. He just ponders it. He gives his personal view, tries to see both sides and that kind of thing. And it was an interesting one. It really got me thinking about free stuff, because I have been the recipient of free stuff in the past. Now, a lot of you might not know, and it's no big deal really, but I did once paint the miniatures for a War Games Atlantic box set. So you'll go, aha, that's why you like War Games Atlantic. No, it isn't. I got talking with them, and maybe they approached me, I can't remember. Anyway, I was back with their Persian infantry set. Did I want to paint their Persian infantry set? And I said, oh yeah, I'll give it a go. But, I tried to say I'm not very good with deadlines or stress or pressure or anything like that. My photography is pretty lackluster. I don't have a professional setup for that kind of stuff, because you need photos that are magazine quality, to do on the box art and stuff. Anyway, I did the project, really struggled with it. I got a mate to help me with the photographs, and even then they weren't quite up to standard that they would have liked. And I basically said, having done it once, I don't think I want to do this again, because I do have a stress disorder and other things. So it wasn't, it was interesting to try. And I have painted for other manufacturers like Elheim and smaller manufacturers of miniatures, and some of my stuff's on their sites, but yeah, and at the time, I was living in the house before this one, War Games Atlantic, the guys would send me freebies, and there's one video way back when I did had an early look at late Roman infantry frames or something like that, and but it's like Lee said on his video. He said he gets lots of offers for free stuff, like any number of 3D printers and things like that, and stuff that he just looks at it and he thinks, that's not what my channel's about, and that's not where my hobby interest lies. I don't want free stuff just for the sake of free stuff. I want to keep on track with what I'm doing, the flavor of my channel and my own personal interests. And that's kind of like what it was like for me. I got the free stuff and I really appreciated it. And sometimes I was absolutely blown away by the generosity. And this was at a time when I think earlier on they were still manufacturing in China before they moved everything to the US. So it was easier for them to ship straight from China down to Australia with their system that they had then. And so I could get stuff pretty early. But what I found was, I think I did paint up, I had got one of their halfling sprues fairly early on, and I painted some of those up, and they were kind of fun. And I got a number of other things, but it wasn't in my area of interest. Oh yeah, I sent the Irish box. Remember that. But then I found that because it wasn't something that was my sort of driving me, it wasn't my special interest at that time or whatever, I was actually, some of them I would just pass on to mates. I'd share them with people who I knew they could put them to good use, and which seemed fine to me. I mean, otherwise they'd just be sitting there doing nothing, and that would, to me, seem a shameful waste, really. But so yeah, I think for free stuff, I won a competition once. I guess that's free stuff, but I won a competition. So. But that's a bit different. We're talking about free stuff that companies send you in the hope that you'll review them and give a positive sort of feedback. Other free stuff I've had was where I some of my pictures appeared in a set of rules, and I got a free complimentary set of the rules. But yeah, again, that's not quite the same either. The kind of thing what Lee was talking about was like when you sent free stuff, and they're hoping that you'll review it, and it'll be good promo for them. It hasn't cost them a huge amount, but they might get a few more sales out of it compared to, they might have sent you one box and then they might sell 10 boxes because of your video. I don't know. Anyway, it's just how it is. But for me, yeah, free stuff, I would be of this sort of similar mind to Lee, unless it's actually in my wheelhouse of what interests me. And people said, oh, we want to send you this, that, and the other, which has become far less unlikely, I have to say as well, in Tasmania, in Australia, of getting sent free stuff, as most of the war games industry is very UK-centric. There's quite a bit in the US as well, and we've got some of our own local stuff, but I'm far less likely now to get sent free stuff, so there is that too. But it does, yeah, it's like, there's a lot of people who get sent free paint sets, and they're not necessarily ones that, say, if Army Painter offered to send me a free paint set, I'd probably say no thanks, because if I wanted Army Painter paints, I would be buying them already, but I don't, and they don't interest me. I've seen them in shops, and they're not as well priced as others, and they just don't grab me. I don't need them. And I don't want them, so I've kind of got my, I'm probably tried different paint ranges maybe, but enough people are supporting the Army Painter, they don't need my support. But if AK Interactive wanted to send me some stuff, maybe Vallejo, if they wanted to send me some stuff, yeah, I'd probably say yes, because that's kind of like, yeah, I like those brands. They're all right. I've been using them. I've been happy. Okay. Anyway, enough of that facetious nonsense. Oh dear. Okay, now, free stuff. Yes. Now, talking about back to plastics and War Games Atlantic and all this sort of stuff. And I don't get sent stuff from War Games Atlantic anymore, since they shifted their thing to the US, and I hadn't painted anything for them for a long time. They stopped sending me stuff, and that's fine. That's fine. If they want to send me stuff, they could send me some more of their Age of Chivalry or Baron's War stuff. I wouldn't mind that. I'd say yes to that. But I'm not even on Facebook anymore, so my profile is quite diminished. I don't mind. But going back to the plastic miniatures thing, so buying all these plastic miniatures as opposed to metal, which I would have done before, it's very much an economic thing. But it's also, I've been influenced by influencers. It's shocking, I know. But in a way where, I've been willingly influenced, let's say, by Dan at We War Game and Paul Stanley, author, on his channel, because those guys have actually been getting free samples. And this is a case of guys who get free samples, and I am very glad they get them, because the way they handle those free samples and the reviews that Dan from We War Game gives and that Paul Stanley also gives are extremely useful. They're very pragmatic. They look at comparisons, conversions. They do, they're not one-eyed about it. They're not there to say, oh, this is the best thing since sliced bread, you should buy all their product, blah, blah, blah. They look at it and compare it, talk about its strengths and weaknesses, the potentials in the kit, how it might be used with other kits. And to me, that sort of stuff is really valuable. That's where I am really glad they get free stuff. That makes me happy, and I've found them very, very helpful, and it's helped me to make the decision to buy plastic figures, which I wouldn't normally have. As I said before, I've just been metal. And when I had my big Dark Age collection, my Anglo-Saxon collection, they're basically all metal, loads of them. And I've still got a box full of Dark Age stuff, unpainted metal figures. But I'm hoping that I know there's a number of figures in there that can be easily used in the 13th century. So particularly there's some monks and priests and stuff like that that were fine, and a number of generic spear chucking dudes that could easily be Welsh or Scots or something like that. The militia type dudes or mercenaries that the English hired from Wales and Scotland and stuff. So yeah, what else was I going to say? Yeah, so UK, unfortunately, it's no longer the option it used to be, for at least for me down here. For those, I guess, who are independently wealthy, or they're not strapped for cash or whatever, or don't have to watch their dollars, they'll still buy stuff. And those who have the competency and the space and the gumption and the intelligence will 3D print any number of figures as well and buy the STLs. I've already made my thoughts clear about that for me personally. And these are personal opinions. But somehow we like to hear each other's personal opinions and ramblings, don't we? Even if we don't agree with them, it's like, Because it's like when we get together, hobby people. I know when I get together with my old friend James, and we just talk hobby stuff, this and that, and I've seen this, and have you seen that, and what have you been working on? And yeah, it's great fun, that sort of side of things. Now, you also might have seen a recent post where I asked for suggestions about more inspiring books for 13th century medievals. Now, I'm not looking for, if you look at the books I have read, there's Three Skinny-ish Ospreys, and I'm going right across the whole 13th century. So, I'm happy reading stuff to do with Edward I's wars with the Scots and the Welsh. I'm happy to look at the First and Second Barons' War. I just finished the book on William Marshall, so that's right at the beginning of the century. Really good read. So I'm interested in more suggestions, particularly if they've got cool pictures to inspire painting, or a book on 13th century English heraldry or something, I don't know. Or and there's plenty of good websites, I know, but there's something really cool about like sitting up, just putting your feet up or something and sitting up with a book, reading a book, even a chapter book. Not just the ones with the pictures of the pretty soldiers. So at least William Marshall was a proper chapter book, that one. That had a lot of words. It was good, though. It was a good history book. So, yes, I'm open. I'd like some more suggestions for 13th century medieval stuff. Can I also say that I'm very specific in that I'm not interested in the Crusades. I don't want to be reading stuff about that. It's not my jam. And I'm not into historical fiction. So please, no suggestions about that. But I know there was a book that I have had my eye on for a while, but I'm kind of waiting for it to turn up at a time when I've got a few dollars and it's come down. I can find it at a really good price. And there was a book on Plantagenet warfare, and it might be a pen and sword book, and it's one from that series of where they've got lots and lots of photos of reenactors, because I thought that would be really nifty painting inspiration. It's got lots of pictures of guys in mail and gambesons, and it kind of like, I love those sort of colour references, particularly where guys have really tried hard to get their reenactment gear up to scratch, and like that sort of stuff. So that's kind of on my radar, but I need some spare dollars for that. But yeah, any other suggestions? Usually I try and find them secondhand, so they don't, as long as they're like a good reading copy and no one's scrawled all over the pictures or anything. That's all good. Okay, so I'll probably think of more. I think I've covered everything. I've scrabbled down in my notebook. I'll probably think of more things afterwards. Anyway. I haven't shown you what I've been working on, and I'm kind of like reluctant to. It's weird. I want to get more done, I bought all those figures. Yes, I've got a few things done. I want to kind of play my cards to my chest at the moment, because it's making the time to get a bit more done with it. I don't want it just I'd like to get a bit more done. I've certainly got plenty of the figures. As well as the War Games Atlantic sets that I got. Again, like Australian source, I got from Medbury. I cherry picked a few miniatures that I knew I hadn't painted for this project for Mark, and that I thought were a good fit still for the 13th century. So they're kind of like generic, like bow archers, men-at-arms. There was nothing 14th century particularly about them, and I thought they would work. So I picked up a few of those to add in as like command and different figures and stuff like that, and just for fun to have something that was metal in amidst all the plastic stuff. So anyway, I've got some of those, and as I say, that's where that sprue came from, of those Medbury plastic horses. Yeah, so I've got some crossbowmen on foot, and yeah, basic generic men-at-arms, but yeah, lovely sculpts. Anyway, guys, apart from that, what else have I picked up? I bought some new brushes, which I'm yet to give a really good try yet. They are from Pro Art Renaissance Sable range. I actually got those from the UK, believe it or not. They were affordable from the UK because they just put them in this really slim packet, and I didn't pay much for postage, so that was a bonus. But yes, that'll do from me. A nice long video. I hope you see this, Fraser, and it gives you something to have a laugh about or whatever. You enjoy the ramble. All right, all the best, and I hope you're all doing well, and I look forward to seeing more videos from all you guys. I hope I haven't said anything too controversial. It's all just my opinion, and you've got to understand my experiences are different living down in the deep south of Tasmania, Australia, and economics and blah, 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 blah. So anyway, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.